Hi everyone, hello. It's Nicola here. I'm just trying something a little bit different today, so we'll see if this works. I wasn't sure what to talk about today. I've always got loads of ideas and I never know which one to go for. But I've decided to go for positive association and socialisation with handling. Hi Alyssa, because then Joey can get involved and he can be my demo dog. So I've angled the camera a little bit differently so that hopefully you can see what I'm going to be doing with him. So I'll just talk to you about what we're going to be doing and then I will introduce him. So you've got realistic expectations of the exercise and then we will go through it. So we talked the other day about socialisation and the things that maybe we're going to have to do differently now that we're inside a little bit more, but there's some that we can carry on doing as normal, and one of those is going to be any sort of handling exercises. So it's really important that we get our puppies used to being handled, because we're going to have to towel them off when they get dirty. We're going to have to brush them. Some of our puppies might end up having to go to the groomers where they're going to have their hair clipped as well. So there's lots of sort of situations where it's going to be good for them to get used to being handled. I remember years and years ago when I very first started dog walking, I used to walk this massive husky. And one of the things that the owners had said to me was never to try and dry him because he'd bite me if I tried to dry him. So they couldn't dry their dog at all. They just had to leave him wet because if they started drying him, he'd try and bite them. So obviously that's an extreme, but you know, we want to try and avoid that situation. So the exercise that we're going to do is kind of helpful just generally for all dogs and puppies, and it's going to be really good for any of them that need to go to the groomers as well. So Joey is on my left, but I don't know whether it'll be the same way around. Also my cat Mavis is there as well. We're not going to be doing handling with her. So Joey is going to be 15 in July. I've had him since he was a puppy, so I've had him since he was 8 weeks old. So he's quite an old boy now. Because of how old he is, he has some kind of physical and mental difficulty. So he's obviously not as active as he once was. He's not as able to go for long walks. He doesn't run around quite as much as he does. And he struggles doing things like a sit and a lie down as well. So he can lie down, but just not necessarily in the way that we would teach him how to do it. So I never really ask him to do a sit or a lie down anymore because I just think physically it's obviously very uncomfortable for him. So it's not fair, and I don't need him to do a sit or a lie down. The other thing that we found as he's got older, and this has been much more pronounced in the last 6 months or so, is what we would call cognitive decline, which is basically he's going a little bit senile as he gets older. So he's not as with it as he once was, and that mainly affects his toilet training. So hi Helen. So his toilet training isn't as great as it used to be. So since we've been sort of out of routine over the last few weeks, what I used to do with him when everything was normal, he used to walk with me to do the school run in the morning and then walk back from school in the afternoon. So they were sort of two of his walks, and then if we had any additional walks that he could come on, he'd come on those as well. Whereas now he's obviously only getting his one walk a day. And he's not kind of being destructive or anything like that because of his age, but he is quite unsettled, especially in the evenings. He finds it difficult to settle down, and he also is struggling. Obviously overnight I'm hearing him getting up and wandering around quite a bit as well. So I think it is affecting him. He is finding it quite difficult in the same way that all of our dogs are. But one of the things that he's had to do since we've been in isolation is he's been having to be my demo dog for some of the online training that I'm doing. And he's thrown himself very willingly into it because he loves getting a treat. The will is always there. Whether he gets it right or not is another matter. So last night I did some training with him, and I can't remember what I was demoing, but I was just chatting with everyone, and Joey was in the background. And what was going on in the background, which I didn't realise, was my bag of treats was on the side in the kitchen where I'd left it, and both of the cats had come in and they had knocked the bag of treats onto the floor. So the cats, my two cats and Joey, were all helping themselves to the training treats that I was using. This was kind of all going on in the background while I'm talking to clients. So yes, that kind of gives you a bit of background of Joey, of what he's like, and manages your expectations about this exercise that we're going to do. Okay, so we'll get started. So this is an exercise that I normally do in puppy classes, and it's working through a little bit of a routine about handling different parts of our dogs so that they're happy with them. And what we're going to do is, like everything, or like most things that I do with dogs, it's all about positive association. So it's making sure that we're rewarding them for things. So we want them to see being handled and being groomed as something nice. We want them to look forward to being touched and look forward to being dried and their paws lifted up and things like that, rather than them worrying about it. So I'm going to go back a little bit so you can sort of see what I'm doing. So we're going to start off with his head first of all. And for each touch we do, we're going to give him a little treat. So I'm breaking these up a little bit. So top of the head first, and then I'm going to give him a treat there like that. The top of the head is quite a good one to work on, because if new people meet your dog, generally what they'll do is they'll go to the top of their head straight away. And lots of dogs don't really like that, especially if it's people that they don't know or they don't trust. So top of the head, and then we're going to do ears. So Joey absolutely loves having his ears touched, and he always has. It's there, it's there, it's there. But again, some dogs don't like their ears being touched, especially if they've had bad experiences where they've had sore ears, or they've had to have eardrops in or something like that. You can see me now. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to stroke along his front, like that. And then on the other side as well. So what I'm actually doing, he's getting quite mouthy with the treats, which is quite common in puppies. So I'm putting the treats on the floor instead of feeding them to him. It just means that he's not going to take my hand off. And then we're going to go all the way from the head down the back like that. So you're kind of going along the back of their spine like that. So we're working nose to tail. And then finish off, we're going to do the tail. So with the tail, you want to kind of take a really good sort of firm grip of it like that. You're not hurting them, you're not pulling it or anything like that, but you're just getting them used to it being held, because if they need the area around the bums cleaning, you might need to take hold of the tail then, or if you take them to the vets and they need to take your dog's temperature, they're going to take hold of the tail then as well. So it's just going all the way from the head down along the back and then onto the tail. So we've done head, we've done back, we've done tail, we've done ears as well. So we're going to try and do paws next. I'm just going to restock on my treats. Okay. So with your paws, obviously if your dog knows a paw, that makes life a little bit easier. Front paws generally tend to be easier than back paws, because it's easier for them to balance when both their back paws are on the floor. If you lift up their back paws, they're much more likely to lose their balance. So I'm not going to lift Joey's up because he'll just fall over. But what I'm doing is I'm just taking hold of his paws and I'm just giving them a little bit of a squeeze. And you want to get them used to being held as well as kind of on top of the paw. You want to do in between as well, so in between the toes, so that they get comfortable using that. And then, as I say, I'm not going to do it with Joey, because if I lift up one of his paws, he's going to fall over, which obviously isn't very nice for him. But with your puppies, what you'll be able to do is they'll be able to balance a lot better, so you'll be able to lift up their paws, have a good feel kind of in between the paws. And another thing that you can do is sort of feel around the nail area as well, so they're getting comfortable with having all around their nails held, so that if they need their nails trimming or something like that in the future, then that's something that they're comfortable and happy with. So we've got head, we've got ears, we've got all on the back, we've got the tail, and then we've got legs and paws as well. Other areas that are worth getting them used to being handled as well are eyes, and mouths as well. Mouths is a tricky one, because if they're teething, obviously you don't really want to be kind of putting your hands in their mouths too much. But all you're doing if you're trying to handle them around the mouth area is, I would just get them comfortable with you sort of holding under their chin and sort of either side of the chin and around that area first of all, so they're comfortable with that. And then if they're okay with that, then the next step would be just starting to kind of lift up the lips on one side and then lift up the lips on the other side, because that's a good way of just checking their teeth. So especially when they're teething, it's a good idea to be able to kind of see, good boy, there we go, see on one side and on the other side what's happening with the teeth, how many baby teeth you've got left in there, how many adult teeth that you've got left in there as well. So I don't think you will have been able to see that because Joey's too far down, but he's just letting me lift up a lip on one side and lift up a lip on the other side, just like that, so I can have a little quick look in. And then if they're okay with that, then you can practice just opening them up as well. So if I was going to do that, what I would do is I would just lift like that, quick look, and then he gets a treat as a reward. So you're kind of going in over the top, holding, just gently opening, and then treat. Obviously Joey isn't teething, so his mouth isn't sore. When your puppy's mouths are sore, they might be a little bit more mouthy whilst you're doing that. So it might be that as you start kind of doing your sort of your handling stuff, they get a little bit giddy and start chewing and biting and what have you. So if that's the case, just walk away, leave it, try again another day. Because if their mouths are sore, it's not really fair for us to be messing around in there and putting our hands in there as well. So we've done head, we've done ears, done mouths, we've done along the back, we've done the tail, we've done the paws. Tummies they generally tend to be okay with. I would start, when you're doing any handling, I would just start with bare hands first of all, so just your hands on their own. And then what you can do then is you can get them used to doing it with a towel as well, so towel along the head and along the back. So obviously at the moment we've not really had much wet weather, so we've not needed to use a towel, but we're going to need to get them used to a towel, especially if you're living in Glossop, because it does rain 90% of the time. So we need to make sure that they're happy and comfortable being dried. So make sure that you're practicing with a towel. You're better drying them with several smaller towels than one big one, because if you have one big one, it's really easy for you to be drying a bit of your dog with one bit of the towel, and then they will get the other bit in their mouths and they will start playing with it, which it's not the end of the world, but it just makes life a little bit more difficult. Whereas if you've got a few smaller ones, you can be drying with that towel and they're not necessarily able to chew on it. Another thing that you could do while you're drying them as well is give them something to chew in the meantime. So give them like a filled Kong or a yak chew or something. So that's keeping their mouths busy while you're getting on with drying them when you've got in from a walk. Or some people will even just have a towel that's just for the dogs to hold in their mouths. So they've got their own towel to hold in their mouths while you're drying them, sorry, with the towel. So that's how to kind of add in the towel. And then after that, you probably want to add in a brush as well. So I have to admit I'm terrible at brushing Joey. I think partly it's because I can get away with not doing it, but he does molt a lot, a couple of times a year. Hi, Debbie. He does molt. When he molts a lot. So I really kind of get stuck into the brushing then. But I think because he's not the kind of dog that needs a lot of grooming, he doesn't need a haircut or anything like that, I can get away with being lazy. But then when I do brush him, he doesn't like it because I'm not spending that time getting him used to it. So really what I should be doing is I should be doing a little bit every week so he's comfortable with it. I think it doesn't help now that he's older, because obviously if I'm brushing around his joint areas and they're sore, that's obviously uncomfortable for him. But if I'd spent more time working on it with him when he was younger, he'd be happier doing it. But with the brushing, I would recommend, if you've not brushed your puppies before, just start off with a really soft brush. So it might not necessarily be the brush that you're going to be using as they're an adult dog or kind of long term, but just something soft to get them used to it first of all. And then when they're happy with it, then you can introduce kind of the right brush for your dog's particular coat. And you would just do it in the same way that we've just done with the handling. So little brush on the head, treat, little brush along the back, treat, little brush on the tail, treat. So for each little brush that you're doing, they get a treat. Again, what you can do with the brushing is similar to how you would do it with a towel, where I'm saying if you need to put something in the mouth to keep them busy, you could give them a yak chew or a filled Kong or something like that. And that works with your grooming as well. So if you're brushing them and they're getting a bit mouthy, give them something else to have in their mouths instead. Because if they've got something like a Kong or an activity toy to be chewing while you're brushing them, it's doing two things. It's giving them something to do so that they're not getting all mouthy with you, but it's also a positive association with being brushed because something nice is happening while they're being brushed, because they're getting a Kong with, peanut butter or a cheese spread or something like that in. So it's actually, even though it's kind of just doing one thing, it's ticking two boxes off at the same time. So that's your grooming and your handling. If they're going to need other pieces of equipment, so like clippers, scissors, nail clippers, anything like that, it's a good idea to try and introduce those. I don't have any of that equipment here, so it's so I can't demo with that, but you would introduce it in a similar way, show them something and then give them a treat afterwards. And I have to say, I'm absolutely not an expert on grooming at all. I know very, very little about grooming, so if you want recommendations of what kind of brushes or what kind of equipment you need, I'd recommend getting in touch with your groomer to ask them. What I normally suggest, if you've got a dog that is going to need a regular groom, so sort of every 6 weeks or so, I would normally recommend getting them in for a puppy groom before the age of 6 months, so they can get used to your groomer and they can get used to the place where they're being groomed. But obviously we're not able to do that at the moment. All of the groomers are shut because obviously they're classed as non-essential services. So as much as possible, you're going to have to replicate that grooming experience yourself. So it'll be a case of getting some scissors, getting some clippers so they can get used to the feeling of clippers kind of vibrating as they're moving along them and the noise of them, and getting a hairdryer so they can get used to the sound of that as well. So we're going to have to almost set up our own puppy parlours at home to get them used to it, so that when they do go to the groomers, they're not absolutely terrified of them afterwards. Okay, right. Any questions before we finish off? I've got this bag of treats here now, and Joey's just, that's all he cares about. He knows the treats are there. He's wondering what he can do in order to try and get them. Yes, you are. Because like all labs, he would eat himself to death if he was given the opportunity. So just a little handling routine. It should be easy enough to fit in of an evening if you sat cuddling with your dog, and then every now and then maybe introduce a towel or a brush or something like that as well. I hope that's been helpful. So I mentioned about maybe talking about some body language stuff, so we'll probably do that tomorrow. I've got a really nice handout that I can give you to help you with watching your dog's body language as well. The other thing that I've just tentatively mentioned on the group is the possibility of maybe Friday night doing a bit of a virtual pub quiz type thing. So if I get enough people interested, I'll do a bit of research and put some questions together. I was thinking about doing it dog themed. So dog related questions, I thought. So I'll try and get some bits and pieces together, and we'll probably, I did one last week with the family, so we'll probably do one as a Zoom call, because then we can have lots of people, and then I can read out the questions, and then you can write them down, and then I'll read out the answers, and I'll just have to trust you all to do your own scoring as well. So just thought it'd be a nice kind of, you know, nice sociable thing to do while we're all a bit cooped up. So yeah, Friday night has been sort of suggested for now. If anyone fancies it, let me know, and I can get some quiz questions put together. Okay, right, have a nice rest of day, a nice rest of Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow. Okay, bye from me. Oh, and bye from Joey. Bye from Joey. Bye.